All right. Well, if you're keeping track and looking at the screen in the background, I'll let you know that I'm flipping the script a bit. So we're going to hit everything we were going to hit. We're just switching orders. So, who you're not is going to happen tonight. And what I want you to do is to turn to Mark 6. And this morning, quick recap. Well, first I'll say this, is that I am leery of afternoon conference sessions. I've been in a lot myself, and it is usually a chore to keep the eyes open. And the food's in, you've been sitting in the morning, sitting the night before, and sitting again tonight. And so, again, what I said this morning is it just takes time. We want to just unpack some stuff. And I think in the first session, hopefully you saw a little bit of how we need to just kind of look and explore some things. We're going to explore some things this afternoon. Again, I'll do my best to teach it. You won't offend me if you're nodding off. That's your flesh, your body. Your spirit is alive and well, right? I cut my teeth in ministry, in youth ministry, first children. I got involved in children's ministry because I was bored of church, if you heard my story yesterday. The reason I started serving in church was because it got me out of the service. And so I started with kids, but it ended up being a 10-year-long thing that I love kids still to this day. Had a couple of my own, and I'm a child at heart, so me and kids seem to get along real fine. And then ended up in youth ministry, and so I'm used to speaking to people that don't look like they're paying attention. And actually part of this journey was God actually teaching me. This is even before all the identity stuff. He was teaching me how to see things in the spirit, and a great training ground was youth. Because he was showing me, don't look at the outside, just trust me. And there was times that I had teenagers that I didn't even know they came, friends brought them, and I felt longer stories than I'll hit up, but right now, but just to the point where I felt that I needed to just preach the true gospel, no, apologies needed. And we just say in youth group, I'd say, hey, if you're here, whatever you believe, we're super happy you're here. You're totally welcome here. But just so you know, we're all about Jesus. We just love Jesus, and we want you to know him like we know him. And we would worship, we would preach. We actually ran it kind of like church, and I'd be preaching sometimes, and you'd see them really looking disinterested on their phones, but I can't look at the outside, at the natural realm. Had to learn how to minister from a different place. And I remember one time with one guy, he's on his phone the whole time, and I felt I needed to just give the gospel, and I just gave it just raw as it is, and just said, listen, this is about you dying and being born again, and you have to die to your old self, your old ways. You have to give up your old life. You have to choose Jesus, but I tell you this, he's worth your life, right? Who's going to give his life? Boom, the disinterested kids raised their hands. Again, long story short, by the end of the night, he had given his life to Jesus through word of knowledge. His whole body got healed up. He had heard his story after. He was in a car accident months before, which was really making him contemplate about what life was about and purpose. And from the car accident, had issues in his body that Jesus took away in an instant, and was beautiful. And so the point is this: had I ministered in the natural, I would have missed what was actually going on in the young man's heart that God brought and trusted us into our ministry with. But because his spirit is good, is powerful, is present, is capable, right? And he took care of all the issues at hand with that young man. And we have lots of stories like that. So, all right. So this morning, I'm going to just continue on in looking at kind of what we are and who you are. If you haven't caught it already, there's kind of a mixture with the two. And so at times you're hearing me speak into who you are, and at times you're hearing me speak about what you are. And we were looking this morning at the three parts: the body, the soul, and the spirit. We looked a little bit at each. This time we're going to look now a bit more at the spirit, and then a bit at the soul. And then we'll kind of just see where it goes, because because there's some time this afternoon. If you guys have some questions, I told you last night, said that I'm not, it's totally okay if you disagree with me. I'm not saying please come at me and be very critical. No, if you are, that's your heart issue. But I'm not saying please be critical, but understand in context what I'm saying. I find that when people ask questions, even of things I believe, based on what I was teaching you last night, it actually takes me deeper into the truth because it allows me to explore it. And sometimes there's questions that I haven't heard in my heart yet. And I go, oh, okay, let's look at this then. But still coming from that relationship with Jesus and with the Holy Spirit. And I've had times, right, where I was able to be brought much deeper into truth because people disagreed. Well, this is great. Let's really look at this. Because I'm not up here to tell you my opinion or my thoughts, right? I'm not giving this weekend just to come and just to talk for hours and hours. Not at all, right? What we want to do is we want to further the kingdom and we want to encourage the reality of Jesus in people's lives. So if you have some questions or some thoughts and we want to dive in, maybe there's something I skipped over that was a little bit quick, you need some more, we need to spend more time on, and then we'll kind of open it up for that and maybe some other stuff. We'll go a little bit with the flow. And you won't miss anything that was, if you're a real scheduled person, we're not missing anything this weekend from the schedule. We're just flipping it around. So are we in Mark chapter 4? Because I'm not. Oh, you know what? I told you Mark 4. I lied to you. I'm sorry. Mark 6. There we go. Mark chapter 6. Okay, last night we looked at the parable of the sower. This is about Jesus feeding. We're going to look at the loaves and the fishes for a moment. And I have a few questions in it, but first let's read. So again, we're going to go to the end part, and so I'll just tell the story, right? People are hungry, not a lot of food, no restaurants. Jesus takes some loaves, some fishes, feeds the multitudes, right? A spiritual act from a natural element or whatever fish and loaves bread are called. But he multiplied food. After that, in verse 45, so Mark 6, verse 45, it says, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida. Well, he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up the mountainside and pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake. When he was alone on the land, he saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the fourth watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, which this isn't part of the teaching. As you get into the Word of God, just pay attention to things that are odd because that's the stuff that I love. He wasn't even walking to them. He was passing by them. Sometimes there's deeper truths in that, not the point of the teaching. But so he was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Okay, another quick side note. It's okay for people to follow Jesus with bad theology. Did you know that? Do you know that none of us have 100% revealed truth? I'm in deception, just so you know. I'm not trying to deceive you with teaching, but there's no way I know everything, which means there's things in my life that I don't see clearly yet. I'm still growing. The disciples were followers of Jesus. When they saw Jesus, they thought he was a ghost and freaked out. They had other messed up theology. They didn't even know. They're still deciding, is this guy even the Son of God? But they were followers of Jesus, that even when Jesus was saying offensive things, they said, where else would we go? You have the words of life. They knew something enough that then followed him for enough until then they started to get it. And obviously when they got it, they changed the world around. So immediately he spoke to them and said, take courage, it is I. Just a second here. This is going to be a wonderful moment for you. There we go. I'm good. First, I'm like, wait a second. Maybe I'm in the wrong chapter on this, but we're good. Didn't waste any time. Said, take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down, and they were completely amazed. Now, verse 52 is the key verse here for what we're talking about. For they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. All right. Like we did last night, parable afterwards, an encounter with Jesus and the disciples that leaves us with questions. Jesus multiplies bread. Disciples are part of that miracle. Jesus walks on water, another miracle. Disciples are amazed. And Scripture tells us, because they didn't understand about the loaves. Here's the question. What in the world, or better way to say it, what in heaven does walking on water have to do with loaves? Your thoughts, please. Why is Scripture pointing to the multiplication of the loaves, connecting it with walking on water? Okay. Don't read my notes and jump ahead, okay? I'm just playing. I agree with you. So how does that connect? The loaves and walking on water. Yeah. It's true. They're good insights. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 I agree. Let's pause for a second because I'm going to take you now to Mark 8. Mark 8, you're going to find something similar. Jesus multiplying bread and fish. So again, we're going to skip to the afterwards, assuming we know the story, and if not, that's what he does. Takes a few and makes it many with the food. Now, chapter 8, verse 14, the disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for one loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed this with one another and said, it is because we have no bread. Aware of the discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000s, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? He's talking about Mark 6 that we were just in. 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? They answered 7. Do you still not understand? Do you see a pattern? You have the multiplication, and then you have a conversation with Jesus that somehow relates back to the loaves. So now you have the disciples, Jesus talking about the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? And then they go, uh-oh, we forgot the bread. And Jesus rebukes them. Rebuking's good. Rebuking's just correcting. There's a wrong way to rebuke, but Jesus wasn't in the wrong way. But Jesus is actually a bit surprised here. He's like, you guys still don't understand what's actually going on here. So now my question is, what are the disciples not getting? 2 times, 2 occurrences, and the lights still haven't come on. They're living it. They're living life with Jesus, very literally. More so than any of us. They have him in the flesh. Everything he does is from spirit. Obviously he would have, washed his hands, put on a robe, stuff like that in the body on earth. But I'm saying all his life just exuded everything. It just flowed out of who he was. Out of spirit. The disciples aren't catching something. What are they missing? Again, we ask questions to think, not to just instantly have the answers. And so, what are they missing that Jesus is trying to teach them? What are we missing from what the Bible is trying to teach us? What's Jesus trying to teach us in this? Any more thoughts? It's all been good thoughts. Kingdom authority. We're predominantly spiritual beings. Remember, we had body, soul, and spirit. Huh. Jesus was weird, wasn't he? Like I'm talking about when you read the Gospels. People would ask him a question that made sense, and he'd answer it from some totally different place that doesn't make sense. Have you ever found that? Was he just weird to be weird? What was going on there? Fundamentally, what Jesus is trying to teach his disciples is what we talked about this morning. How to live and think from the Spirit. And really the lesson from the bread is what you guys said at the back. Everything is possible. What does the walking on water have to do with the loaves? Everything in the Spirit is possible. That's Scripture. Nothing is impossible. It's all possible. I said this last night, that Jesus didn't just confine himself to healing the sick, casting out demons, and raising the dead. All wonderful things. Why? Because they are the antithesis of what sin has brought in, right? Talked this morning about the redemptive heart of God. He didn't create us at fallen. Right? He created us perfect in his image, put us in a perfect garden, and said, now live, have authority over this earth. When we fell from that and everything else fell, now the redemptive heart of God is to bring us back to a place of that perfect alignment with his will. But you don't get there from the natural realm and natural thinking. You get there from spirit. Jesus is teaching his disciples all throughout the gospel how to think and how to speak, how to act spiritually. That's it. Why did he have weird answers to their normal questions? Because he was answering them from a spiritual perspective. And as we look at the lesson, even of the loaves, we go, wow. And we look at Jesus' life and we go, that guy overrode the natural law. He walked on water. He multiplied bread. There's a time that he makes himself invisible. You say, where? It's like they were trying to throw him off a cliff because they didn't like what he was doing and what he had to say. So you'd think, here he is in a crowd about to be thrown off a cliff and killed. You think that people would notice where he is, right? Scripture says he just walked through the crowd and left. So did that mean he physically became invisible or people's eyes were blinded to him? Either works. I don't know. I just know that when you're the center of attention, people would notice if you were leaving. And I don't think they just said, okay, you can go. We're not going to kill you now. He just left. Right? He did some wild stuff. But we said this morning that Jesus was spirit with the soul in a body, and so are you. He was just showing us that there's no limitations. Did the disciples eventually get this? You think? Do you read the book of Acts? Post-resurrection stories? Right? What would it have been like to be the first person to all of a sudden be somewhere and then somewhere else in an instant? Do you think that they prayed for that? That was Philip, right? I have lunch fuzz on my brain, so bear with me. Right? Philip, an angel sent him to a place. He went there, right? He found this man from Africa. He spoke to him about what he was reading in the scriptures. The man says, what's going to stop me from being baptized right now? He says, nothing. He baptizes him. And then it says, in that instant, he was somewhere else. Philip, do you think he prayed for that? Do you think he believed really hard for that was an answer to a lifelong dream to all of a sudden be transported somewhere else? Or do you think that they had started to learn how to live out of the spiritual dimension, and in that things happen that they didn't even expect to happen? Do you think that the scripture says that Peter, who's one of the guys in Mark 6 and Mark 8, says that even when he walked by people, they were healed? Do you think that that was something that he had to attain to? That he started with hours-long prayer for healing people, laying on of hands, believing the best that he can, the hardest that he can, and then he reached the status finally where he could just have his shadow heal the sick? Or is it possible that they started to switch their perspective and they started to realize who they were and where they were, and started to live from their position, their heavenly position, and out of that, wild things happen that they didn't even think of with their male and female brains? See, when you live from an earthly perspective as a Christian, it takes work. And it doesn't work well. And you can live many years as a Christian, always trying, always striving, always working hard, and always failing. But can I give you an encouraging word today that that's not the gospel? That's the carnal, earthly living as a Christian. That spirit living is fruitful living. When you live from the Spirit, and you access from your place of heaven, it just shifts things, and things happen that you didn't even expect to happen. I was preaching once at a church in Regina, and I was just telling us, I wasn't even telling a story of a back being healed. I was using it as an example. If you said, I think I was talking word of knowledge or something, I said, if you said, and your back is healed and it gets healed and blah, 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 I went on, didn't think anything of it. At the end of the service, a man who was in the back comes to me and he says, Tim, when you mentioned that thing about the back, my back got instantly healed. And I went, that's amazing. How hard did I have to pray for that and believe for that? I wasn't even aware of it. I wasn't aware of the back issue. I wasn't even active in faith for the healing of backs. So out of that and knowing what I've been learning about the Spirit, I went, that's amazing. I think his name was Bob. I said, Bob, guess what? He said, what? I said, you have just been assigned as the resident back healer for the day. And I grabbed the mic, the service was over. I said, anybody with back issues, come up to the front. Actually, the topic I was preaching on is what happens when people don't get healed, which I appreciated that the church wanted to hit it up from that angle. So it was good. We weren't even talking about this is how you heal the sick. We were just talking about what happens when they don't get healed. And how did it end? It ended with Bob and a line of people all getting their backs healed. I didn't pray for anybody, not even Bob. What's my point? Man, the Spirit is alive. And the Spirit has the mandate of heaven Thief comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy, but Jesus came that you may have life and life to the full. It is the reversal of what sin brought into the earth. It's the redemption to the core of who you are, your identity. It's the redemption of your soul, the torment of depression, of anxiety, of worry, all the feelings that God never intended you to feel. It's the healing of bodies, of sickness, of everything that you were never supposed to have. It's the redemption of heaven itself, and the Spirit is at work. And when you come from that position of the Spirit, I mean, I had someone once come up to me. I had preached somewhere, and things were happening. It was great. Kingdom was alive and well. They weren't at the service. They came up to me a week later and they said, Tim, somebody told me the title of your message. And I'll tell you, I've been dealing with this, this, and this. And then I heard the title of your message. I felt this freedom just come. Can I tell you that I didn't even have a grid for that, let alone believe in faith and pray really hard for it. I'm not against prayer and believing. Of course, it's important. We'll talk a little bit about that. My point is this, is that you are not limited because you are spirit in a oneness relationship with the Holy Spirit. That's what my Bible says. Is that true? So my Bible says that you're seated in heavenly places, right? We talked about that this morning. So when you pray, can I ask you, when you pray, are you praying from earth or from heaven? And you don't need to answer. I just want you to think about it. Are you praying from earth or are you praying from heaven? Because when you pray from earth, it looks like this. I am just a man, and here's a ceiling, and I'm going to shoot as much up as I can, hoping that God will hear me and take pity on me and grab one of these prayers and answer it. That's a tough position to be in because you never really know. Is he listening? Is he approving of what I'm praying? Is this even going to happen? Talked a little bit at lunch with Wade and Tara and brought up the point that a lot of times when we're praying for things to happen, it's a prayer of hope and not a prayer of faith. It's different. You can be hopeful for something, but the power isn't in hope. It's actually in faith. Let me explain faith for a second because it helps us in the way that we see. Right? Hebrews 11:1 says that without faith it is impossible. Oh, no, that's the one. What do we say? Got the wrong verse, 11:6. No, 11:1 is what I want. Faith is being sure of what you hope for, certain of what you do not see. You see, faith sees. It just doesn't see the natural realm. It sees beyond the natural realm into a realm, the unseen realm, and it believes in what the more powerful, authoritative realm. So let me explain it this way. The Israelites, do you know the story? They got out of Egypt. They're trying to go into the promised land. They're right at the border of the promised land. And Moses says, I'm going to send 12 of you guys out as scouts. Come back and report what's going on. Now, this is called the promised land because heaven has spoken and said, I am going to send you to this place. This is going to be your home. I'm going to take care of it for you. It's a bountiful place, a land flowing with milk and honey is what it's referred to. So these 12 guys go out. They all come back and they report what they saw. But they end up reporting from two different perspectives. The first group reports and says, man, there are giants in this land. They are so big, we are like grasshoppers in their sight. They were afraid. The other guys come back, Joshua and Caleb, and they say, man, the grapes are huge. God has given us this place. That's interesting. Do you think they ended up reading the wrong maps, like different maps? Joshua and Caleb ended up in a different land than the other 10? No, they saw the same place. but they saw something different. The story and the report from the 10 was so believable that it actually infected the entire nation. But it didn't infect them with the word of heaven. It infected them with fear. What they could see from the earth perspective. And because of that, it actually cut that entire generation out from the promises of God. And their destiny became from going and conquering a land to be theirs for generation to generation, to going and wandering a wilderness till their death. Which I always find is an interesting story, because there would have been a moment, right, where they were waiting for the last person in that group to die. They're just wandering. So kids would have raised for 40 years, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 39-year-olds, knowing the story, knowing why they're in this terrible desert land, and that's all that they know, and they're just waiting for the last person to die. So I don't know if there was mourning or celebration. They're like, good, he kicked the bucket, we now can go back in and reclaim what God had promised us. But here's the point with faith. Caleb and Joshua did not deny that there were giants, correct? Some people call faith, or what they call faith is actually just pretending, denying, hoping, risking. That's not faith. Faith isn't, you have cancer in your body, but I'm going to pretend you don't. So I'm going to act like I don't have cancer. That's not faith. That's like saying there were no giants in that land. There were giants in that land. If your body has cancer, if your body has sickness, if whatever the issue is, that's true, according to earth. But what does heaven say about it? Because I'm not looking at, or when I go and pray for the sick, when I go and pray for people with cancer, I'm not looking at their cancer. I'm not asking for the doctor's report so I can study it and really assess it. I'm not looking there. I'm not denying it, but I'm looking past it, because I'm looking from the Spirit. And in the Spirit, they're healed. In the Spirit, for all of eternity, guess what? There's no cancer. In the Spirit, that cancer doesn't, I'll say it a better way because that was going to come out a little jarbled. They are already healed. From a spiritual perspective, the same way that people that have yet to receive Jesus are already saved. 2,000 years ago, the man dies on a cross, is resurrected, releases all the power, redemptive power, to go as deep as sin did and to reverse it in the body, in the soul, and in the spirit. Which means 2,000 years ago was your salvation of your spirit. It started it. I received mine in 1988, but it happened 2,000 years ago. The same act also released healing. Now, I might receive that healing in 2020 and 2022, but as far as heaven's concerned, it was already a sealed deal. So I'm now not coming from a position of I'm begging God to do something because he's already done it. And in the Spirit, that's ridiculous. Coming from the Spirit and asking God to do something he's already done is ridiculous. When I was getting married, we were putting out the invitations. It was important to me to have just God glorified at our wedding, the presence of God there and everything. So I kept asking God, would you be at my wedding? Would you be at my wedding? And one day he spoke to me and he said, Tim, I said, yes. You don't need to keep asking me. And I got the image as if I had sent out an invitation to someone and they RSVP'd back and said, yeah, I'm coming. And then I sent it out again and they RSVP'd back, and I just kept sending it to them. And how ridiculous that would be. And I went, oh, okay, I don't need to keep asking that. When we don't know what's already happened in the Spirit, it's really hard to live by the Spirit. But as he reveals who we are as Spirit, as he reveals what heaven has done within the spiritual realm, now all we do is align earth with heaven. And now we're not in the bedroom tossing up hopeful prayers. We are actually seated in heavenly places, speaking out and releasing what God is saying over the earth. Do you think there's a difference? Christians that pray earthly prayers pray ineffective prayers. That's just the way it is. There's a lot of unanswered prayer because we're praying it from earth. I was in a country and we were going to do this big evangelistic outdoor event. It hadn't rained the whole 3 weeks I was there, and all of a sudden the storm clouds came. I saw those storm clouds in the spirit 3 days before when I was praying, spending time with God, but I thought they were spiritual storm clouds. And all of a sudden I saw them and I realized this was actually a natural thing. He gave me the heads up. Cool. So then we go, and the Christians that were there to help run the event, we went, you know what? We believe that this is actually a demonic storm. I'd never seen a storm go. I'd never tried to speak to weather before in my life, nothing like that. But this moment, I knew in the spirit that's the position that heaven was, and that was a position I needed to be in. So we rallied the Christian. We said, we need to stand and we need to speak against that storm. Now, catch the difference. We weren't saying we need to ask Jesus. We need to say, God, please remove the storm. Please, it gets, I just don't have a nicer way to say it. It just gets really religious and really ineffective. Why? Because it's coming out of an ignorance of who God is, what the spiritual realm is active in, and what it's capable of doing, and what your authority in Christ is. You already got all that stuff. And so what we did is we started then praying and rebuking the storm. Why? Because it was going to keep people away from hearing about Jesus. As we stood, and we just stood in faith, and I started rebuking this storm, I looked, and the Christians were all huddling under the only shelter that there was. And they were praying hopeful prayers. And something in my spirit, it didn't sit well. And so a rebuke came, which is allowed. It's not arrogance. It's just sometimes needed to just wake people up to truth and reality. So I called them out from the shelter, and I said to them, listen, if you're praying a faithless prayer, if you don't really believe that this storm is going to move, sit down. It's not doing anything. But if you want to join with what heaven is speaking right now, which is this storm has to go because people need to hear the gospel, then keep on praying. It shook them up. It woke them up. It did what it needed. Because Tim Harrison can't do that. When it comes from the Spirit, there's some life in it. There's a little bit of extra smack. So for about 5 more minutes, we prayed. And then the guy I was praying with, the evangelist that I work with, thank you, he said, that's it. It's done. He said, I saw it in the Spirit. I saw a light shoot out right into the heart of that storm. And honestly, I went, oh, okay. Like, I didn't know. Like, he said stop praying. Okay, I guess we'll stop praying. 30 seconds later, rain stops. The clouds separated. We have pictures of this, even of the whole event and stuff. Clouds separated over the square. It was like a center square that we were in. And there was clouds everywhere around the city except for that center square where then the light shone down right on where we were at. Now, what was interesting is just because the storm stopped didn't mean the people were instantly there. But we were expecting thousands and thousands of people. But what broke out was such an attitude of worship, such a strong presence of God. The Christians that had been hiding in the shelter, putting hopeful prayer. And it's not condemnation. That's not heaven stuff. It's not shame. It's just calling us to that place, that truth, that understanding of who we are and what we can do. But such rejoicing, honestly, like I haven't been a part of before, broke out that it didn't even matter that people weren't there. There was just such a celebration, and they linked hands and started playing music and started worshiping, and the presence of God was there because they had encountered something of the Spirit. They had encountered heaven. Now, the cool thing is people did show up. People got healed. People found Jesus, and we were there for hours. It was beautiful, but what's the point? There was something about recognizing the difference between faith and hope. And faith sees, but it doesn't pay attention to the natural. It's looking beyond that. Caleb and Joshua, they saw beyond the they were the grasshoppers, beyond the giants. And they saw the promise that God had spoken. And that's what they believed, and that's what they reported from, and that's why they were the only two out of the entire generation that walked in the destiny of God. Did God not call that nation? Did God not love that nation? but only 2 walked in what he had foretold them, the destiny that he had planned for them. That's a bit sobering, isn't it? And it was based on their perception and what they could see. So now to bring this back to Mark 6 and Mark 8. We weren't done there. I told you the connections were the bread, the conversation afterwards. Jesus is teaching them something about the Spirit. There's more connections in those 2 passages that we can pull out. I don't know if you caught that. Both times it brings up a key of what was happening with the disciples. Did you catch the one in Mark 6? It's the very last part that we read. They didn't understand about the loaves because why? Their hearts were hardened. Interesting. When Jesus rebukes them when they didn't understand about him talking about the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, what does Jesus say? It basically says, do you have eyes and don't see, ears and don't hear? Do you have a mind that doesn't understand? Are your hearts hardened? Same reason. Because they were caught in the same problem. What's going on there? We're going to pull that out in 2 ways. First way to look at the spirit, and second way to look at the soul. He says, do you have eyes and do not see? Do you have ears and do not hear? Do you have a mind that doesn't understand? Turn to, I always get my firsts and seconds mixed up. I want to say 1 Corinthians. I'll correct you if we're wrong, if I'm wrong here. 1 Corinthians 2. First Corinthians 2, verse 6. You guys doing okay? Who's winning, body or spirit? Are you there? 1 Corinthians 2. We'll start at verse 6. We do, so this is Paul writing to the church at Corinth, we do, however, speak a message of wisdom amongst the mature, not the wisdom of this age or of the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing, we speak of God's secret wisdom. A wisdom that has been hidden and that God destined for our glory before time began. None of the rulers of this age understood it. For if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. However, it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. Have you heard this before? This passage? You know, growing up, I'd hear this passage, and usually the person preaching it would say, listen, God has such incredible things for you that you can't even understand, things that you don't even know. It's wonderful. Is that true? It was true. But some reason they would stop there. And not read the next verse. Because what we just read and quoted was actually Paul quoting from the book of Isaiah. See, you know, Isaiah lived in a time in the Old Testament where Christ hadn't come into the earth yet. The things the disciples had access to was not what they had access to in the Old Testament. And so he's talking in the context of a season that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can comprehend what God has in store for those who love him. But what's the next verse in Corinthians? But God has revealed it to us by his Spirit. Do you get the connection? Eyes, ears, mind. Jesus in Mark chapter 8, you have eyes and don't see, ears that don't hear, a mind that doesn't comprehend. We're talking spiritually right now. In the book of Isaiah, you could not understand the things of God like you can today. There was no Holy Spirit to translate it for you. There was no oneness with heaven, with Jesus. Was there still something for them? Yes, there was. Was there still miracles? Could they still have some access to God? Yeah. Do you realize that your ability to hear the voice of God is modern? Do you know that? That for thousands of years, one group of people called the Israelites would have 1-2 people that could hear God. That's it. It wasn't everybody in the camp being like, hey, what's God been speaking to you? How's your devotions been going? What's going on in life as you're reading? No. It was a prophet within the nation that would sometimes get a word. We have them written down, but they lived for years. So you have 66 chapters of this book. That means 66 times, I'm being a little bit, not exact, a little bit general, how many prophetic words each prophet had within their lifetime. My point is this, that they weren't hearing God every day. Even the prophets weren't hearing God every day. So they existed in this time where their eyes couldn't see in the spirit because they still lived with a dead spirit. This is heresy, number 5, 10, whatever, if you're keeping track. When King David died, he didn't go to heaven. Did you know that? Abraham died. He didn't go to heaven. Did you know that? How could he? They died within the season pre-existing Christ. So if they could go to heaven, if they could have an eternity with God, why did Christ have to come? I'll leave that there for your own Bible study. It's Scripture answers it. I'm not saying they went to hell and were under torment. But I'm saying they didn't go to heaven for a season until Christ reopened it. Didn't happen for some of them for quite some time. Now, and the spirit time is different than earth time. So what that feels like, I don't know. Was it an instant? Was it long? I don't know. But you can't think of it from an earth thought. You have to think of it from a spirit thought. But they didn't have access. And now Paul takes from the Old Testament and he adds New Testament into it, which is, but these things have been revealed to us by his Spirit. Go to the end of the chapter. He does it again. For who has known, verse 16, the mind of the Lord that he may instruct him? Who has known the mind of the Lord? Another quote from Isaiah. If you stop there, you miss it. You get stuck in the Old Testament, pre-Christ. You miss what Christ opened up, which is that spiritual new creation connection with heaven. And he finishes that chapter adding to the Old Testament saying, but we have the mind of Christ. I asked you guys before, which one of these, what is your soul? You said your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. I said, does your body have a mind? Does your spirit have a mind? And he said, they do. You have more than one mind. You have the mind of Christ. You have a fallen mind. We'll look at it a bit tonight. You also have a mind and a way of thinking in the soul. And so what are you thinking from? What are you living from? Because it's very important. And in the spirit, you have eyes, you have ears, and you have a mind of understanding. You can see things, you can hear things, and you can understand things, even the deep things of God. And that's without 10 years of Bible school, amen? That's purely because of who you are and where you are. I want you to humor me for a moment. Can you close your eyes? And I want you to think about your home, where you live. I want you to think about the city of Estevan. You know what? I want you to even look at the Tim Hortons. Now I want you to think about a song that you like. Maybe you don't, whatever comes to mind. And think about what that song is. All right, well done. Open your eyes. What did you see? Anybody see anything? No? It's not a setup. What did you see? Okay. So how many of you saw your home where you live? How many saw Estevan? Obviously, you would have seen different parts of it. How many saw the Tim Hortons sign? Okay. Can I ask you what you saw it with? Okay. You didn't see it with these, right? You saw it with the eyes of your soul. Eyes of the body, that was the eyes of your soul. But you also have eyes of the spirit. What if all of a sudden you saw in your mind's eye a friend or someone you haven't thought about for a while? What would you think about that? I told you the story last night. I think I did. When I was at that university and I knew I was supposed to speak. Well, actually, that's a closer example. I just told you I saw a storm that didn't happen for 3 days. Where did I see that storm? I saw it in the spirit. Why? Because these things have now been revealed to us by the Spirit. I'm just Tim. I'm not Prophet Isaiah. I'm not Jeremiah. I'm just Tim, who's dead and now alive in Christ. And because of that, it has opened up, made my spirit alive. And my spirit has eyes, my spirit has ears, my spirit has a mind. You guys heard, I said the music. Did you hear the music? Did you see the music? How'd you interact with the music? Didn't happen here, right? I didn't hear any music with my body. You ever have a song you just can't get rid of? The only way you can get rid of it is to find another annoying song to replace it. What's happening? You have ears outside of these ears. But you also have ears in the Spirit. The Holy Spirit is always speaking. I was training grade 12 students in a public high school about just how to reach out to the kids. So I'd go into their school, and I was discipling them for a few months because we were opening up a group within their school. And I was with a youth pastor, and I was teaching them how to hear God's voice. And I just did a little practical, let's just listen, just write down what you hear, and then let's just see. The teacher was gone, whose room we were using. She was a Christian, goes to Harvest City. She came back, and she said something. And he starts to cry. Because what he heard was what she said when she walked in the room. And he was crying because he said, I've never heard God's voice before. I had two feelings in the moment. One was, that's amazing. This is a beautiful moment. The second was, how on earth are you in ministry? And I don't mean that condemning. That's an honest question, because ministry is not something that you should seek, just so you know. As far as even an actual position, whether in the church or wherever. You shouldn't seek it. You can desire it. Don't seek it. Why? If you're in ministry, you understand. My point is this. I never wanted to be in ministry. God told me to do what I did and what I do. And he spoke to me every time I whined in ministry. But not only that, I didn't know what to do, because I don't know what to do outside of God's voice. That's the honest truth. Ever since I was 18 years old and had to make decisions for myself, right? 17, I decided to go into grade 12. Not a big decision. 16, go into grade 11. 18, what am I going to do with my life? At that moment, I knew enough about God that I could easily screw up my life if I didn't let him guide it. Every year since then, 20 years going in, he's guided what I've done. And it doesn't make, even to this day, I can't tell you what I'll be doing 3 months from now. I don't know. All right? It's not concrete. I mean, we were talking about this, that really my journey following Jesus, it's not a bright light. He's a bright light, but it's dark, not evil. But I don't see the future clearly of my own life. I know him. I know what he sounds like, what he feels like. I lean in the direction that I feel him, and it's never failed me. I have no clue. Next year, 5 years, I got no 5-year plan, ladies and gentlemen. My plan is Jesus. 20 years, it's never failed me. 20 years from now, it never will. Just go, I think you're here. I've made, and won't get into stories, made life decisions and stuff that don't make sense at all in the natural. I told you some people say they deny it and they call it faith. It's confusion. Some people think faith is just taking the biggest risk. No, that can be stupidity. Why? Because faith comes through hearing, and hearing the word of God. If he spoke it, you do it. If he didn't speak it, don't worry about it. Right? I know a woman that gave away all her money because she just went, I want to make this extravagant gesture of faith, but it wasn't faith, and it really messed her up. It still is messing her up. It wasn't faith. Oh, wouldn't God bless her? No. I don't know. She just did something. You know what she did it out of? The soul. As a youth pastor, every 6 months, I had a young man sit down in my office and say, Tim, God has spoken to me and told me who I'm going to marry. 15, hey, and you know, he spoke to you. So I had this responsibility to be able to speak wisdom into the situation without crushing the legitimate desire to hear God's voice. So I'd ask questions. Okay. When do you plan to get married? Oh, yours and whatever for now. Okay. Well, it doesn't sound like anything you need to really rush into now. And within 6 months, all of a sudden, God's voice changed. Now, that's maybe a little silly, even though it was honest, because none of those people ended up marrying who they said they were going to marry, which means what? They were hearing it in the soul. And I found people that are bitter towards God because they've said, God wanted me to do this and speak this, and it just turned into a big mess. 2 thoughts about that. First thought is this. Do you not read the Bible? Do you not know that Christianity is the hard way, not the easy way? Following Jesus doesn't mean your life goes perfect. Actually, probably the opposite. We'll look at that a bit tonight. It's not about being comfortable. It's about being comforted by his Holy Spirit. You understand that? It's about learning to live from your position in heaven, walking with Christ as Christ. It's not about everything on earth lining up and going perfect for you, you winning the lottery and everything else in every way. The second thought is this, is that you had a desire in your soul and you put the God stamp on it to help yourself, to help trick yourself believe that it was something you had to do. So you didn't discern it was a soul issue. You pretended it was a spirit issue, and it blew up in your face, and now you're mad at the Almighty Spirit. Not a good position to be in. No shame, no condemnation. Let's just look at what's really going on. Don't call spirit what is soul. Discern. I've had things that I'm not sure about, and I've told God, God, I think you're saying this. I'm letting you know. I call it the sabotage card. Say, I'm letting you know this is the way I feel to go, but I'm not sure. So if this isn't you, sabotage it. And he has, and he hasn't. When he has, I'm not bitter. I go, thank you, Jesus. He guided that. And I usually see even years later the wisdom in that. And when I'm light stays green, I keep going. Great. I keep going. What am I doing though? I am keeping my heart open for him to speak. I'm not drawing a line that I'm not confident that he's drawing. And I've had lines that I was confident in. And I just knew. He spoke, this is what I'm doing. The evangelist that I work with, every time we get on the phone, I have to fight him. Why? He doesn't agree with what I'm doing in my life right now. And I don't agree with it either. The problem is God spoke to me and I know it. You say, well, Tim, what are you doing? This whole COVID time, we've been spending a lot of time building our business. I don't want to be on my laptop 10 hours a day. I'd rather be in the nations activating and releasing the stuff of the Spirit. It's a lot more fun. It's been hard for me, if I'm honest. This isn't a rough year because of 2020 and all of that stuff going on. It's a rough year because God told me he was going to strip me down. And he sent 2 people to me to prophesy that over me. And both times I instantly rejected it in my heart. I've had a few where I'm like, no, that's not true. I don't receive that. But my position before the Father is one of openness, which means he is the Lord of my life. Doesn't matter if I agree or disagree. Doesn't matter if I like it, don't like it, if it's comfortable, uncomfortable. What matters is it him? Which means I'm able to walk knowing that I'm deceived in areas I don't see things fully, knowing that I don't have it all figured out. I'm able to walk and navigate whatever happens in life because at any point he's allowed to speak, change my mind, change my thinking, change my direction, change my actions, whatever. But the moment I pull back on that and I start calling soul stuff spirit stuff, I'm in trouble. Is this landing anywhere? We okay? Thank you, Jesus. Whoops. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then I'm going to say a few things about thought and your mindset, and then if you guys want to do any type of questions or deeper exploration, we can do that. If you don't, I have something else that we can do. But let me just wrap this part up by just simply saying, you have been trained, I said this morning, but you have been trained in your 5 senses. That's the way we've all been trained on the earth realm. And so it's so ingrained in us to believe that what we can see with these eyes, hear with these ears, think with this mind, that is what's true. And anytime we discover something in the spirit that contradicts it, there's tension. And it's tricky for us to believe, to respond, because this and the body, I don't have it up anymore, are actually getting in the way of this. You're a spirit with a soul in a body, but you're still in a moment of time where your soul has to decide what it's going to follow. 1,000 years from now, these two are in perfect alignment. Right now, your will is here. And anytime that tension presents itself, it's an opportunity for you to prove out the truth of who you are as spirit, the truth of who God is in his voice, in his being, the truth of the faith that you profess, that Jesus is Lord. Do I believe in my experiences? Do I believe in my thoughts? Do I believe in what I think is true? That's all soul talk. Do I believe in what I feel, or do I believe in what I know in the Spirit? What God is speaking through his word. It's tricky. Because your man mind will bring up all the remembrances of all the times that this is the reason why this is this way, this is that way. Right? To bring up even, I talk about healing a lot because it's something I've definitely pursued and gone into. But it's like you go to pray for the sick and your mind will remind you of all the people that it didn't work for when he did it before. So is your experience true in that moment? Is your feeling of the fear and the unbelief that's being produced in that moment true? Your thoughts? Or is the fact that Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and he is the healer, and he released it all through the cross, is that true? What's true? When you start to live from this place, you start to see, hear, and understand differently. And that's what starts to really shift things. But you need to deny what you've been taught as true. It's kind of weird. It's like if we said, right, the floor is light, we say, no, whoops, man, I'm just throwing everywhere. The throw is dark. It contradicts, because we've lived in an earth realm that says your thoughts, your feelings, and your experiences equal truth, but it doesn't. Experiences can lie, thoughts can lie, feelings definitely can lie. They're not bad. They just are not to lead your life and your decisions, because you are to be led by what? Spirit, not the soul. And as a mature church, we need to understand what that means, the difference between the soul and the spirit. Because right now I see a lot of us in Christianity that are on roller coasters because we're being led by the soul and by the flesh. The soul gets to decide. It's the in-between. Heaven, spirit, earth, body, soul is the in-between. It decides, am I going to follow the earth or am I going to follow heaven? And we get those opportunities. We'll look at temptation tonight. We get those opportunities because they are to grow us and strengthen us, not to defeat us. God allows them in our lives because it proves out truth in us as we're in the period pre-resurrected body, pre-eternity, still have the option to choose against the will of God at any moment of the day. But I have good news for you. You have eyes, you have ears, and you have an understanding in the Spirit to see, hear, and think things that are incredible, that my Bible says men longed for years. Kings wanted to be able to perceive and look into these things of God, the revelation of heaven. They didn't have access. Doesn't mean they were bad people. They just were born, destined by God to be alive in a different time. But guess what? God destined you for this time. You didn't pick your birthday. God did. There's a reason for that. He wanted you in the season where you could see, hear, and understand the revelations of heaven so you could live out of those truths, because that's where the power and the life comes from. Not from the works, not from trying hard. If you're doing that, you're in the flesh. You're living from earth. It's from the Spirit, where all of a sudden you're in some different place. All of a sudden you walk by someone and they're healed. All of a sudden you say the word back and people get healed. And you went, oh my goodness. I thought this stuff was hard. In the Spirit, it's just fruit, fruit, fruit. Can I pray and then we'll take a break? We'll take 10 minutes. Thank you, Jesus. God, I thank you, Father, that your plan is a good plan. Your way is the best way. And Father, I thank you that you have opened up the understanding of heaven. Lord, you have not just given us some fictitious or mysterious thing called the Spirit, God, but you've recreated us as a new creation with the ability to see, to hear, and to understand that 1,000 years from now we can see, 1,000 years from now we can hear, 1,000 years from now we'll know so much. And we have access to that now. So I ask, Lord, for an open heaven and a revelation to be able to get past the natural loaves and to see that in the Spirit all things are possible. Amen. 10 minutes is good, Mike? All right. Use it wisely.
Welcome to the modern way. I'm trying to be somebody I'm not, but it's not what I want. And tell me there's another way. All of the lights that chased are now faded. All the cheap thrills were only time wasted. Tell me why society's plan should define who I am. Surely there's a higher way. All of my best friends are sick of pretending. We want the truth. So much is missing, so give us the real thing. I know it's you. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. I don't want a stereotype to decide who I am. It never knew me anyway. I'm over trying to find the next high, cause the high never lasts. I'ma go another way. All of the lights I chased are now faded. Till it was right, the times they are changing. Tell me why society's plan should define who I am. Surely there's a higher way. All of my best friends are sick of pretending. We want the truth. So much
All right. If everyone could slowly make their way back to their seats, we're going to continue this session before supper here. Just want to make sure that you guys get as much content as possible. Cool. Cool. Well, I enjoyed that last session. Did you not? Living in the Spirit. I love that he talked about the feeding of the 5,000, the feeding of the 4,000. How Jesus kind of has that comment. He's like, "What happened when I fed 5,000? How much did you have left over?" And then he feeds the 4,000, and he says, "How many were left there?" And I always find that story unique in the nature of like what happens when you know whose hands you're in. And when you put bread in the hands of the Father, when you put yourself in the hands of the Father, what he can multiply through you. And I love it. But I can't wait for more, man. Just keep going.
Good.
I'm just going to stay right here the whole time. No.
Yeah, that's fine. That's I like weird. Justin, do you mind coming up? It's only weird. It's exactly it. Exactly it. Can Justin use that mic, or does he just yell loud? I just asked Justin shared something with me when we went into break, so I just asked him to just share it with you guys.
Hi. So this past week I got hired on for a construction job, and I ended up hurting my upper back and my shoulders. Not bad enough to go to the hospital or anything, but they were really bothering me. And then earlier, as Tim was speaking about a guy getting his back healed, I felt my back and my majority of my shoulders get healed. And when I came to talk to him earlier, there was just some slight tension in my right shoulder. And when he prayed for me, it all went away. So it doesn't bother me anymore.
Amen. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate that. Thank you, Jesus. That's awesome. So am I making it out? Is Justin a plant? Did I send him into your church in January just to set this whole thing up? Pre-COVID, pre-me even coming as the replacement hitter for the conference? Right? Or is there fruit in the Spirit, even when we don't have a clue what's going on? Do you know what the best way I've discovered to minister is to just do nothing? Rest is a very, very powerful thing. And sometimes we're so stuck in the mind of our body and in the emotion, negative, fear, worry, even that hope that's actually motivated by anxiety and worry, that we're not activating the Spirit, so we're not getting the very thing we're desiring. It's blocking it. Just some thoughts. All right. Let's just look. We're not going to go super long, and then we'll do, like I said, a Q&A if you want. If not, we'll switch to something. But I already had a few questions coming that I asked just to save for after. But, all right, let's look at this, because we have to address where all the issues actually are. Do you know that the devil isn't really hot stuff? Do you know he's not as powerful as the church believes he is? Can I say that? Do you know that I've been in some places where the devil was bigger than Jesus, and that's a problem? And some of those places were my own head. What's the problem? Your spirit is perfect. You got no issues, just so you know. In the core of who you are, you're sealed up and you're good. You're seated in heavenly places. You can't become more spiritual. Your spirit. You're good. Where's the problem? If you're a Christian that goes, man, this thing, I struggle with this and have issues and all of this type of stuff, is the problem in your spirit? It's not. Is your problem with Jesus? He's not powerful enough to fully save you, help you, heal you? Are you too much of a mess and a problem issue for him to really do much with? Is that really what's true? No. Where's the problem? Devil's not the problem. Thinking's the problem. Do you know who you are? You know the devil can't actually mess with you. You're seated in heavenly places. He's not there, just so you know. He can't touch you. I hear that language all the time, honestly, from the devil's doing this and the devil's doing that. I'm like, man, that's a lot of praise for a guy that my Bible says when we see him, we'll say, is that really he who tormented the nations? Or I'm misquoting it a little bit, but messed up the nations. It's a word in there. If someone can help me, I'll take it. If not, we'll move on. In that moment, we see him as he is, but we've also seen ourselves as we are, and we realize, oh my goodness, that was really it. Problem's not the devil. I'm not saying devil doesn't exist. He doesn't mess with stuff. He doesn't need to be told where to go and what to do. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you are not oppressed by the enemy crying out to God, hoping that he'll hear you and save you. You are solidified in the authority to tell sickness, fear, pain, worry, anxiety, the devil himself exactly where to go and what to do. You realize that when demonic things encountered Jesus, Jesus was not the one worried, right? You know they were yelling even before he got there, freaking out. Because Jesus knew who he was and he lived out of that. The Bible actually has a lot to say about your thoughts because it's that important, right? We read 2 Corinthians, you have the mind of Christ. In chapter 10, it says we take every thought captive. In Colossians 3, set your hearts, your minds on things above, not on earthly things, which really is a big theme this weekend. All right, Revelations 2:12, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Philippians 4:8, think on whatever is true, noble, pure, right, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. We'll look a bit tonight at the thoughts of your flesh, of your mind. We just looked a little bit at the thoughts of your spirit. What we're addressing right now really is the thoughts of your soul. Because if you look in Mark 6 and Mark 8, are your hearts hardened? He brings that up in both passages. There was a hardening of their hearts that actually became a blindfold to the realm of the spirit, them seeing things from the spiritual perspective. It was a heart issue. Well, where's your heart? It's in your soul. Above all else, guard what? Your heart. Why? Because out of it are the issues of life. Your heart speaks, hears, decides. Out of your soul come all these things. But the root of it, what those things are rooted in, is what you've been meditating on. Meditation isn't an Eastern religious thing, just so you know. Meditation means just to dwell with your mind. And you're meditating on things all the time. If you have a problem in your life, how do you process it? I'm guilty this year, and God was reminding me and rebuking me of what I'm teaching right now. And I had to go, oh my goodness. I went against my own teaching. And I had to get back in alignment because why? I started complaining, and I'm a verbal processor, which means my thinking comes through my mouth, not internal. And my wife loves it. I'm like, oh no, he's just talking, and I don't even care if she's listening. I just am getting it out because that's how I figure things out. Even when I study the Bible, I have a whiteboard, and I'm thinking, I'm talking, and I'm drawing pictures. I'm getting it out because I'm trying. That's just how I am. And so in that processing, though, there was anxiety and there was worry. So I was processing it like a man. I was meditating on it like a man, not like a son. Not like a child of God, not from my spirit. Why? Because in heaven there's peace. It wasn't peace in what I was talking, how I was talking. You know what's interesting about your emotions? Your emotions are also part of the soul, right? You know what's interesting though? You cannot feel anything that isn't produced by a thought. It might be subtle. You might not be understanding or hearing what the thought is. You hear and understand the emotion way stronger. But I challenge you to trace it, and you'll find that it's rooted in a thought. If you have really excited and happy, is it over nothing? No. You have a thought. Something that you're looking forward to is about to happen. Something you've been waiting for just happened. If you're depressed, if you're anxious, guess what's behind that? A thought. How you think is really important because it produces how you feel. And how you feel is important because you express how you feel, even when you're trying not to. You know the word fine? How is it going? I'm fine. Okay. You're saying something, but more is being expressed. Right? I'm not putting down people. I know that's even a hot button topic as far as mental health and all that stuff today, right? And I'm not here, to be honest. I don't have loads of insight. If I did, I would come and have a whole teaching on it. I have some thoughts, and my wife is more than me. We're asking Jesus, what do we do right now with a culture that is so tormented in their thinking? Where's the freedom? How do we bring this? And we have to do that. Why? Because there's things that, again, not church bashing, but there's things just out of the zeal and out of really the lack of depth in understanding that we'll say things, but it's not actually rooted in the heart of God or in truth, and it damages, right? Instead of bringing healing, bringing love, bringing freedom, it actually brings further damage. So all I'm saying, we just have to be careful. Are we giving opinions? Are we giving thoughts? Are we speaking out of the revelation and the truth of heaven? Because that's where the power is. Regardless of what's going on, chemical imbalance, demonic activity, just watching and filling your heart with stuff that's messing with you. And I tell you that Jesus is the answer. I say that it doesn't throw Jesus off. He's not going, oh man, I didn't think about that one. I'm not sure. When I said all authority, I didn't know that was going to be something that was going to get hit. That's not what's going on. Now, does that mean everything happens in a second? Does that mean, that's what I'm saying. The insight and letting the Father just guide, not just for you, but even if you're helping people in that situation is really important. Just be honest, be real, and love and follow Jesus. But the context, what we're talking about right now is your thoughts are very important because you have a thinking. We just said you have the mind of Christ. Do you think there's ever an issue with that? Your issue's not in your thinking spiritually. It's fine. It's perfect. It knows, it understands, it sees, and it hears perfectly. And it will for all of eternity. The problem is right now, right, you have another mind. It's in Romans 8. That's an enmity, it says, towards God. In the fallen mind. And you also have a mind of the soul then that processes. What you meditate on produces. So I have good news for you. If you're like, oh man, Tim, I've been so stuck in worry and anxiety over this, can I tell you that you are an excellent meditator. You already know how to meditate. You just need to change what you're looking at. Change your perspective. And instead of producing the emotions of fear, anxiety, and worry, you can produce different emotions that don't deplete you, that don't wreck your body with health issues, that don't cause you to withdraw from being who you are to a world that's broken and hurting and dying, but allow you to be living life and life to the full. That wasn't an eternal once you die thing that Jesus said. That's something you have access to now. But We need to learn to live like that. Why? Because we've learned to live a different way. We need to learn to live spiritually, not carnally. It involves a process. And guess what? The Holy Spirit loves being a part of that process to mentor you and to teach you. Listen, there's some things in my heart that I wish I had people close to me that would walk with me and show me how to do these things, but I don't. That's the honest truth. Doesn't mean they don't exist. I just have yet to find them in Regina. And I found a guy in Kansas, and he's too busy. We met once on a Monday morning to mentor me on Skype, and that was 4 years ago. We still talk here and there, but it's not what I was after. But you know what? Paul didn't have a mentor either that he could find. And do you think he walked in some deep stuff, understood some deep stuff? Well, we've been reading a lot of the stuff of his revelations all weekend, right? The Holy Spirit mentored him. I love mentorship as far as it's fathering, right? And discipleship, it's important. But what's my point? My point is if there's things in your heart that you need help, doesn't mean you're stuck. You have the Holy Spirit that will continue to guide and teach you through these things. And you know what he's going to hit up? What are you meditating on? What are you thinking about? Is your heart hardened? Are you seeing things like an earth person or like a citizen of heaven? Because it looks different. I went and prayed. A man in our church was dying of cancer, and I went to the hospital room, and I asked him this question, and I was serious about it. Sorry, Mike. Is our end time? It's 4:30, right? Okay. And I asked him this question. I said, this is this honest question. I'm not trying to be silly or ignorant or whatever. I said, do you want to be healed? Because he was old enough, and we were just talking about that in last 2, where the reality is heaven is not a bad place. There's nothing, honestly, there's just nothing on this earth for me. You say, well, Tim, your family's here. Like, yeah, I've asked God to be around long enough to disciple my kids and to do what he wants me to do on this earth, but I have no problem getting out of here. You know, there's so much more. I really do believe in the gospel. I really do believe in Jesus. I really do believe that life without sin in a fallen world is a much better thing. So if I can go there, I'll go there for sure. So I asked him. So my point is this. There's a point I don't want people to pray for me. There's a point I'm like, let me go. I got to get out of here. So I was in a sincere question. I said, do you want to be healed? He said, yes. I said, okay. I took my heaven authority, prayed for him as soon as, and again, when I say pray, you know, the Bible doesn't even tell you to pray for the sick. That's another thing, but it tells you to heal the sick, right? Justin said, and I'm not exposing anything. He said when he prayed for me, do you notice I didn't say anything, right, Justin? First time, yeah, I don't always say words. I did the second time. There's no like, hey, 30 degrees here, say the word like this. That's not how the Spirit operates. Why could Peter heal with a shadow? I've tried to heal with my shadow, just having fun. Not being silly as far as demeaning what's going on, but just being in the freedom of the Spirit. On the street, hey, let's try this. You stand here and I'll do this. Let's see what happens. It didn't work. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. And then I put my hand on their knee and they got healed. So I'm like, all right. But it just doesn't have to be this big, just serious, stressful moment. It's just free in the Spirit. So I lay my hands on this guy and I curse the cancer is what I did. Boom, he hits the ground and he starts shaking and doing stuff with his mouth. We're in the hospital room and his family's all around. And I don't even know if they know Jesus. But I am literally casting this demonic thing out. And again, it's not making crazy theology that every time someone's sick, it's a demon. Sometimes it is. I mean, you need insight, and sometimes it isn't. But doing this, I'm also trying to teach the family what's happening in the Spirit. Blah, blah, blah. And the nurse is coming in. Is everyone okay? This thing's going whatever. You could say, well, that's a really powerful, cool moment, and it really was. But the cancer was still in his body. I spent 6 hours over the next week teaching him some things I'm teaching you guys, and I told him this, and it's the whole reason I bring up this story as an example. I said, listen, I don't know what that last test is going to show. If it's going to show that it's shrunk, that it's gone, bigger, or the same. I don't know. I know this, that God does not want that in your body. And I aligned with heaven, and something happened. He was denying that. He said maybe he made it up. What happened? His mind got in the way of what had happened. I'm like, really? I said, did other people pray for you? Yeah. How come you didn't drop for them? Why am I so special? That all of a sudden you decide to put on a big show for me. I'm like, there was a demonic thing going on there, friend. And he was a Christian. Again, I mean, I just keep doing all these disclaimers. Doesn't mean he's demon-possessed. There's just a lot of junk out there, right? So I spent those 6-7 hours, and what was I doing? I was saying, listen, you can walk through this like somebody that doesn't have Christ, which means that you have to be afraid of what you don't know and only dependent on exactly what the doctors are telling you and making decisions based off of that. Or you can walk through this like a Christian, which, yes, the doctors, thank God for doctors, hospital, and whatever, but you see past the natural, and you're looking to God. God, who are you? God, you're the healer, and I trust you for my healing. Even when the natural realm is saying the opposite, I'm still believing you on your word for what you're saying. The truth is, in this story, is he couldn't get out of the natural. I said, you can walk through this with faith, with joy, with growing your relationship with God because of how you're responding, because you're responding from the Spirit, your spiritual position in heaven, or you can walk through this like anybody else without Christ. And he walked through it like a man. He made that decision. Now, I don't judge him for that. I can't control him, control that decision. I just have to report that's what happened. And the cancer, it did take him. It took a couple years, but it did take him. Now, I have nothing to say about that. I don't know. Had he walked through it in the Spirit, would it have taken care of it? Had he not? The honest answer is, I don't know. Things I know, I'll tell you. Things I don't, I'll tell you I don't. All I know is Jesus is the healer. When I go back to the next person with cancer, I pray from seeing from the heaven position, not going, that last guy died and the guy before that died. Now I'm using healing as an example, but you can throw anything in there. Relationships, you can throw work thing, whatever has been tripping you up and pulling you and causing you to meditate on earth stuff and release earth fallen emotions. Can I tell you there's a better way? Think on whatever is lovely, whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is true. Your emotions don't equal truth. Your experiences don't equal truth. Even the thoughts that are from here and the thoughts that are from the body are not true. They might be honest. There might be an earth truth in them, but they are not the truth of the Spirit. The truth of the Spirit is where the power is. That's living in faith. That's walking in the Spirit. Knowing how to control this thing, what does the Bible say? Take every thought captive. It's not giving us a nice thing to think about. It's saying take every thought captive. Why? Because it knows how important it is. Right? We just read it too, where it says that we don't battle against flesh and blood. Right? But the word, when you Greek that out, it says the mental perceptions, how you perceive, how you see, is a wall that is opposed, put up against the knowledge of God. That's what it's describing. The mental thinking that is a wall towards knowing God. That's what we're tearing down. We're not battling against the earth stuff. We're actually tearing down the perceptions, the mindsets, the belief systems of man, both in and out of the church, that are actually keeping people blinded from seeing the truth. And the way that you think is so important because it will produce life or it will produce death. It will have you living like a Christian atheist, like I heard someone say once. You say you're a Christian, but you act like you don't have God. Or it will have you living life and life to the full. Who you are is important. What you are is important. How you live and how you think is important. And it's how you think from that soul realm, the will choosing to believe the things of the Spirit that actually give you access to the things of heaven to live like Jesus lived. He has not restricted you. He is not withholding from you. He has given you everything, his life itself, that now we can walk in the fullness of God. 2 Corinthians 2:9 says we've been brought to the fullness of the Trinity of God. What do you lack? What are you missing? Nothing. You just have to train and learn to walk in the new way, the way of the Spirit. And to do it, you have to let go of some beliefs and thoughts of the way of earth. It's the only way. But you can do it if you want to. God's with you. He's done it. He's calling you even today to say, just walk according to the Spirit. There's so much freedom, so much power, so much love, so much life in the Spirit. And I want to encourage you guys in that. That's really this weekend, is obviously just encourage you in Jesus, encourage you in thinking from a different perspective, his perspective, heaven's perspective. So I want to do this. We're going to close this session. I'm going to have you close your eyes again. I said, I think last night, it doesn't matter. The words and the cognitive, the mental agreement is fine. But it's just a step. It's not the end. It's not the totality of what needs to happen. What we have to happen is implement the truths. Learn to walk this out. You know, my dad said at the break, he said, wow, there's so much, so much to go through. I said, yeah, my intent isn't that you guys would understand and know everything. That's just not the way it works. My intent is just to expose you to a greater reality of the gospel in the hopes to spark interest and hunger for you to continue to dive in. That's why I do last night. I want you to have the keys of revelation. You don't need me. You can continue to explore. It's just, will you? And as you explore, things get worked out. As you understand how to position your heart, right? How to take authority over your thoughts and discern. This is a fallen mind thought. This is a soul thought. This is a spirit thought. And then you still get them. Jesus got them. We'll look at it tonight. But it allows you to know what to follow, what category it's in. It allows you to know, you know what, God just spoke to me, and now I have a word for this person, and I know that, and you can deliver it in confidence. And it allows you to know when it's like, that's not God speaking, even if it's coming from somebody else who's saying, God told me this to say to you. Like, no, that's not him. That discernment is so important, and I'll say, especially in this time, and as time grows nearer. I don't know when Jesus is coming back. I can just tell you that we're closer today than we were yesterday. I'm saying you can see in the confusion of the world and of the church, the lack of the anchor like we talked about, and the confusion even of identity, you know how important it is to be able to discern truth, discern things of the Spirit, so that you can know what to build your life on, what to walk in, and what to avoid. And I can't tell you, here's your checklist. Yes, no, do this, don't do that. I can't. But what I can do is encourage you in the way of the Spirit and in relationship with Jesus. Because that's the way. So I want to do just a little practical thing, and then we'll open up just if you guys have some questions. I know there were one or two. We'll just spend a few minutes doing this. I want you to close your eyes again, your natural eyes. And that's actually why we close our eyes. You know there's no verse in the Bible that says close your eyes when you pray, right? Jesus did once, and so now everyone does. Right? But it's really to shut out the natural realm so that we can be more aware of another realm. And sometimes it's the soul realm, sometimes it's the spirit realm. So right now, I want you just to take whatever has been a blockage in your life. I don't know if it's producing worry, anxiety, fear, confusion, or anything else that I didn't mention. But I'll tell you, none of those things are the things of the Spirit. Do you know that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, some other ones? You know that you're activating the things of the Spirit when you can feel those things as emotions. So whatever's been a blockage in your life right now, I want you to consider how you're perceiving it. How are you looking at it? What lens are you looking through? Is it through a lens of limitation, of trying to figure out with your man brain? Of course, I'm using that word for mankind, not just for a gender. Is it with your man brain that you're trying to figure things out? Are you coming from a place where you think God is actually angry with you? That God maybe doesn't really like you or know you or wants to do anything for you? What place are you coming from? How big is that thing in your life? Is it something that, if you're honest, there's been a voice, which is a thought, that's been telling you that this is something that will never be resolved, never be fixed, it will never go away? Whatever your perception has been, just be honest with it in your heart. And now, let's look at it from another angle. How do you think God sees it? If you could see that issue like God sees, does it change it? How does it change it? What shifts? Is it as big as an issue as you thought it was? Is it as confusing, or is there hope? Even without solving it, can you find a perspective that releases peace into the situation? Knowing that God is a good God who loves you unconditionally and who is the answer. And whatever that answer may be and whenever it may come, you know that when you fix your eyes on Him, that you can't steer wrong in it. Is there a scripture that comes to mind that helps give you some perspective on your issue? Something that speaks into your situation. Something you can grab on and hold on to, knowing this is what's true. Now, whether you need more time or not, this was just an exercise, because actually what we're teaching and taking you through really is just lifestyle. This is just to be commonplace, to just correct, to see like God sees from the Spirit. But I just want you in your heart just to release that issue to God, to trust Him with it, and to thank Him for the resolution. And if your mind is going, well, wait, there is no resolution. I'm like, this is the faith we're talking about. It's seeing beyond the issue into the Spirit, which already has the answer. And you can thank Him for it before it hits earth. It helps pull it in. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Father. In the midst of it all, you are still good. You are unchanging. Thank you, Father. Amen. Now, can I ask, it depends kind of how, I've had things that I just have to get into the secret place And sometimes they're gone in seconds. Sometimes an hour later, it's still sitting on my heart. And I have to go the next day. Some things, and I don't know why it is that way. I do know there's still things I need to learn. But for some reason, and I have my kids do this too, I say, just check your heart, close your eyes and see, is there any ugly feeling in your heart? What's behind, what thought is behind that ugly feeling? Okay. Now let's find the truth. What's really true? And it's interesting what the heart's actually speaking, because it might speak. You might feel whatever, that you're dumb, that things are hopeless, that whatever that thought is behind. Well, obviously that's going to produce some of that worry and anxiety, because if that's true, that's terrible. Would you not agree? But is it true? And what is true? So can I just ask this? I'm just saying that sometimes I understand things take longer, but anybody, we just took, 3 minutes, 4 minutes there. Could you feel a shift even in your emotions when we just practiced that for a few minutes? Did anybody have that? Yeah. A few. Yeah. That's interesting, hey? The way that we perceive, the way that we think, the way that we feel is really important. Diving into truth, processing life with Jesus, not outside of him, is just really, really important. And as the church, it's something that we have an opportunity to grow in so that we can walk according to the Spirit. Led by the Spirit, in the Spirit. That's the way you were created to be. Amen. All right, you guys have done very well. I commend you for that. We're still in fallen bodies. That don't want to sit for hours and hours, but thank you for just the hunger, the attention, even for the day so far. Tonight we'll talk about who you aren't, and then tomorrow we'll look a little bit more at who you are again, to kind of close up the whole weekend. Before we do that, is there any questions or things that you guys just want to ask and we dive into? It doesn't mean I have all the answers, but again, if there's things that we want to look at a little bit closer, or if I have some insight in it, the same that we've been talking here, I'll definitely give it. If I don't, I'll just let you know. I don't know. Any thoughts? Yeah? So the question is, if somebody needs healing, do you have to be present for them to be able to pray for them to be able to receive their healing? That's how I understand it. Is that correct? Yeah. So there's this really cool time in Scripture where a centurion comes to Jesus and he says, my servant is really sick and I'd like you to heal him. And Jesus is like, sure, let's go. And he goes, whoa. I don't deserve to have you in my house. He says, I'm a man who is under authority, which is interesting, but I won't unpack that, but it's an interesting statement. And he says, I tell this to one person, go, and he goes. I say, do this, and they do that. And Jesus says, wow. We just saw Jesus rebuke his disciples for their hard hearts because they couldn't see spiritually, because they were acting out of their earth heads instead of the spirit. But now we see a centurion that's not even a Jewish person, and he's going, such faith have I not found in all of Israel. What's my point? The servant got healed. Jesus was nowhere near him. The spirit realm dominates the natural realm. It's not limited like the natural realm is. The spirit realm has no problem with space. That's how the healing worked. I've heard testimonies and people, friends of mine, over the phone, other states, countries, places, healings. No problem. Why? Because it's not about me and my limited human frame. It's about Jesus and the reality of the realm of the Spirit. And it's about that realm breaking into this realm. And it's not limited by space. You can be halfway around the world. And what's interesting, I think it was Reinhard Bonnke. If you guys know Reinhard Bonnke, if I have the wrong evangelist, forgive me, but the story stands true. They weren't allowed to lay hands on the sick anymore. Can't remember if it was because of the size of the crowd or just, I think it was more regulations of the place that they were ministering in. So they went, what are we going to do? Because the Bible says lay hands on the sick and they'll recover. We can't lay hands on people anymore. So they stopped laying hands, and they saw healings like multiply greatly. Because why? They just pray for them over the mic. They'd be far off. I started, when God activated this stuff and released this stuff in me, I mean, I'd see miracles everywhere, and I'd just say, who's sick? Put your hand on the area or whatever. I said, Jesus is going to heal you. And I literally would go, 1, 2, 3, Jesus. Okay, check it out. Who just got healed? Who's better? And hands would go up all the time. And I'd say, who didn't get healed? Who got partial? Okay, we're doing it again. Right? It's not a magic show. It's the reality of Jesus in the realm of the Spirit. Is that all right? Did you get it? Go ahead. Pray for everyone all over. Don't worry. Even if you don't know, just say, Jesus, am I allowed to do this? Is this okay? And just try it. Any other thoughts or questions? Disagreements? Church is going on tomorrow, and I'm still including an identity. We'll talk about more of who you are tomorrow at the time that Pastor Mike's about to yell at us. 10 o'clock, yeah. So there'll still be some worship, and then we'll look at who we are again tomorrow. So does our spirit, soul, and body, all three of them, have emotions? Is the question. That's a good question. I don't believe so. That's not something, though, I'm going to say I'll be solid on, because like some things I am, some things I'm not. Right? The way that I understand it presently is those emotions exist in the soul, because your body can feel, right, when it has natural stuff going on. Like the interesting thing with emotions is they're unseen in a seen realm, right? So everyone believes in emotions because they have them. But we're also taught that science is king, and I'm not anti-science. I just believe that God created science, right? I'm very pro-science, right? But it's how does science, I mean, there's chemicals. I know there's different things in brain activity, things that you can monitor, right? But there's certain stuff within the emotions that it's like we don't see that. We can't see how you feel with our natural eyes. So I believe it's in the soul realm. Does your spirit have the ability to feel? I believe it does feel out of the soul. So it has the ability to feel joy, to feel hope, to feel peace, to feel all those wonderful feelings it will feel for eternity. In and of itself, I don't lean that way right now. Could I be wrong? Yeah, I could. If you want to dive into that more, go for it. I think for me, something that helped was when I realized I had more than one mind, more than one feeling center. Because that's when I went, oh, not only can I think very spiritually and very carnally, I even have thoughts that aren't even anything to do with me. Used to be condemned with certain thoughts, and I found out those weren't even my thoughts. And so that's a place where I'd say I've given a little bit more intention. And I didn't know, the Bible only mentions the soul, the spirit, and the body in one place that I found, which is 1 Thessalonians 5:18, right? And so understand, I'm teaching. I mean, I have tons of verses on this stuff. If you've been going, I don't know, we haven't spent enough time, and is this even biblical, right? It's just, if you want to double to triple the time, we can look at every single verse, But I don't mind giving them to you. But I don't actually even have, when I'm saying each has a mind, I can't take you to the verse. I also can't take you to the verse that you shouldn't have sex before marriage. Now, I believe that you totally should wait to have sex in marriage. I just can't take you to that verse. What I can take you to is the Bible and explain covenant to you and how powerful and beautiful sex is and why it was made for covenant. So in what I'm teaching even here, for that they each have a mind, well, I took you through the mind of Christ. Tonight, if we get to it, I'll take you through the carnal mind in Romans 8. I don't have a verse for the mind of the soul. So you're like, well, where do you come up with that? I explained some stuff today, but here's the thing. If your spirit is dead at birth, and if in Romans 8, your mind, fallen mind, carnal mind, is opposed to God, what chooses Jesus? What decides I'm going to make this decision for Jesus? Because there's a process of thought, wouldn't you agree, that goes into that? Yes, it's a decision of the will, but there's a process of thought behind it. It has to be your soul. Even the process of thought that's taking place with your will's in the soul realm. And it exists then within the mind. And, you know, someone, when I said, what's your soul? Said mind, will, and emotions, right? We even know it as that. I just can't take you to the exact verse that says this is it. And it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means that maybe I haven't found it yet. So there's a long answer to a short question. Yes. Sure can. Good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There you go. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Ah. No, thank you. I appreciate that, and just to bring attention to it, simply to say, remember I said to you guys last night, it's not my truth. It's either truth or truth. Doesn't mean every word that's come out of my mouth has been 100% true. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if I've been able to see things, I haven't studied cognitive therapy, right? I'm happy I can pronounce it. So, right? But I've spent time with what I was teaching you last night, right? With Jesus and with the Spirit and with questions and going, how does this work and look, and with my Bible. And so I'm just saying that's just what he's given us. Not me, us. We all can. I'm like, so I just bring that up to say, and just be like, just, you know, as a confirmation. I'm like, oh, that's cool. That there's connection. I mean, there's way deeper that we can go in a lot of different paths on that too. But I just want to encourage you guys just to not go, okay, boom, good conference, boom, I'm now back. Whatever I think, however I live, whatever happens, que sera, sera. That's not biblical, right? And that's unfortunately, that's even, you know, I enjoy conferences, again, been impacted by conferences, but it can get us into such a mode of, okay, good, I went and did something and learned something. But if you don't live something, I got to call you on it, because I got to call myself on it. Like, we missed it. And we need a church that's living truth, not just believing truth or saying they even believe truth. Because again, to the Hebrew, to believe is to live. To the Greek, you can believe without it actually changing anything. It's kind of wild. Just why? Anyway, got off the soapbox. But our whole education centers are set up that way. Told you, 96 in biology right here. Why? Because that's a Greek-produced education center. In my head, I knew some answers. Does not mean I have understanding on biology, right? We can't apply that to the things of the Spirit. We can't. For the sake of the world, honestly, we can't. We have to come into an understanding of God. The knowing of God is really important. The understanding of God, and that's the relationship with God. Theology is the study of God. I'm not against theology and theologians. That's amazing. But if you're doing it separate from knowing him, the intimacy, the Bible uses the word yada, which is actually a slang term for sexual intimacy. Which is what? The most intimate, closest relationship between two beings. Because sexual intimacy involves your body, your soul, and your spirit. The world preaches it's just your body, so we got a lot of mess out there. Why? Because that's not true. Soul and spirit's also involved, and outside of covenant, it's making a lot of mess in the soul realm. Say, not the spirit realm? Spirit realm's already dead. Torment keeps happening in the soul. They need to start at the spirit. The other thing is, I'm rambling here, because you have to start at the spirit. Why? Because the perspective has been wrong. Religion starts on the outside. The gospel is inside. Inside out, not outside in, which means what? Unfortunately, churches have been guilty of correcting the actions from the outside and totally missed that the issue started on the inside. We are going to speak to and encourage and pull out the inside so that the mind is renewed for them then to act as they are. But when you get into control, that's religion. It's manipulation. It's very, very destructive. It's not life. It's death. And you have now dead religion. You don't have life of Jesus. Man, I've had people, even in my Bible study groups, things that I had a guy got saved in my youth group. And we had a discipleship group he started to come to. And he goes, man, he's like, I had this book of spells, this dark book. You know, he said the name. Man, that book is evil. I'm done with that stuff. I'm like, that's awesome. It's like, I'm not going to do black magic anymore. He goes, white magic. I'll still do white magic. And all the Christian school kids were, oh. And guess what? I didn't correct him. Do I believe he should do that? Like, no, but he's on a journey. I'm like, do you know what? Him not doing black magic was a step. Jesus can continue to speak and guide his heart. I'm not here to tell him what to or not to do. I'm here to encourage his relationship with Jesus. Because I know that's the only way that he's going to survive this world. If he has Jesus, really, and knows how to navigate life with Jesus, then everything else is taken care of. And when they forget, people that I disciple, and they do forget, and they call me, Tim, I have a question, whatever. And I always ask, what is Jesus saying about this? And they know because I've taught them this, and it just happened the other week. So I laughed. I said, hey, bro. I said, but what Jesus? Because I know he hasn't asked. I said, but what's Jesus saying about this? He's like, oh, yeah, I didn't ask. And he hangs up, and he calls me 30 minutes later. He's like, thank you. He's like, man, that was good. What did he do? He went to Jesus instead of a man. And Jesus gave him the answer. You know, there's a lot of pastors under a lot of weight of counseling and trying to solve people's problems, but they're not supposed to be Jesus. I mean, we are Jesus, but you get what I'm saying. I'm to encourage. My pastoral ministry is to encourage your relationship with Jesus. It solves a lot of problems. Now, I believe in the body that we're not to be islands, and sometimes even in my own life, Jesus has hid the answer in other people where I couldn't get it, just me and him. No problem. Go meet, get counsel, get whatever, and then all of a sudden, poof, I hear the voice. He speaks through another person. Okay, no problem. But my life needs to be lived through Jesus, processing through Jesus. There's just really no other way. Everything else gets really confusing and messed up, and I think you'd agree.